Yo, what's up guys? Today I am going to be doing an advanced healing guide for Resto Druid in TBC. Now I'm going to assume that you already know the basic stuff like what your spells do, how to gear, what enchants and gems to get, and which talents to take. Which honestly, regarding the talents, shouldn't be that difficult considering Resto Druid talents have like no customization at all. You basically just take all of the healing talents and throw the rest of your points into whatever you want. But if you want to see my talents, then here you go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Boop. So this guy's going to be focused on raid healing specifically because by the end of this video, I want all of you to be able to absolutely destroy your co-healers on the healing meters. Like literally to the point where they are in shambles. I want you to embarrass them. That's what I want you to do. Like this won't be one of those fucking normie guides where the background footage is of a Resto Druid who's like third on the healing meters getting beaten by a holy paladin and a Resto shaman. No. I'm going to teach you how to absolutely massacre the other healers in your raid to the point where they're literally groveling at your feet and worshipping you like you're some sort of healing deity. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to turn you all into the absolute chads that you have the potential to be. You're all going to be absolute chads after this video. So you know what? Let's begin. Here's something that other guides probably won't teach you, so let's talk about this. Now, your goal as a healer is similar to a DPS, where DPS want to be doing as much damage as they possibly can. As a healer, you want to be doing as much healing as you possibly can. However, the way you go about doing that is much different than how a DPS would go about doing it. For DPSers, in most cases, you'll use whatever spell does the most overall damage at any particular time. Healing isn't really like that, since everything is situational depending on what kind of damage is happening at the time. And you also have to deal with overhealing and having your heals get sniped by other healers, and that complicates things a lot. So, for example, the most healing you can possibly do as a Resto Druid is a 3-stack Life Bloom on 4 people. But obviously you can't do that 99% of the time because you'll just overheal, right? So it's all situational. Unlike DPS, where you can just do whatever the best thing is all the time. So if I were to put it plainly, your goal as a healer in a raid is to maximize your effective healing, as in healing that's not overhealing, right? Because that's what effective healing is. It's healing that is effective, that is not overhealing. So, and that's difficult, right? Because there are other healers in the raid sniping your heals. And then there's another thing that you want to do where you also want to go by the end of the fight. If you didn't go that probably means you could have done more healing. However, keep in mind that Resto Druids are extremely mana efficient. So if you don't end up going by the end of the fight, it might not be your fault. So let me teach you how to maximize your effective healing in a raid. So as any healer, the main thing you want to do is figure out which spells do the most effective healing per second and which spells do the most effective healing per mana in any specific scenario. Now I put the word effective in front because it doesn't matter as much which spells actually do the most healing per second or healing per mana. What matters more is if you can realistically land those heals in a raid environment without them overhealing. That's what matters the most, because a spell that has high HPM or HPS, like it's good, but if it overheals like 80% of the time, then it's not very effective, is it? It's not even worth using. Now, unfortunately, I'm banned from the game for 15 days because Blizzard is a cunt, so I can't log in and check, but if my memory serves me correct, these are the orders of highest HPS and HPM spells for Resto Druid. Now I'm going to ignore Tranquility since that spell is just super troll in TBC. Like it does a fuck ton of healing and costs a lot of mana, but you can only heal your party, and it also suffers heavily from spell pushback, so you'll want to pair it up with Barkskin in a lot of cases, but Barkskin's on a global cooldown. So honestly, it's just really clunky in TBC. If you think you can get good use out of it, then go for it. In this tier, the best use for Tranquility seems to be healing your party up after Magtheridon triggers phase 3, or if your whole raid gets tail swiped by Nightbane, you could use it there as well. Anyways, moving on to these priority lists here. So specifically as a Resto Druid, you'll want to focus on your highest HPS spells mainly, because you're not likely to run out of mana as a Resto Druid. If you spam mana pods and use Innervate and have full raid buffs, like, you're not likely to go. But remember how I said that healing is situational, and you'll have to deal with overhealing and getting sniped. What this means is that these lists, these priority lists, will be guidelines for you to follow, which is unlike DPS players who will follow their priority list to a T. As a healer, you will have to use a different approach. What you want to do is you want to think about how you can maximize your effective healing with each of these spells, okay? But the most important spells to maximize are the ones near the top of the list, because those do the highest HPS, and therefore you'll be wanting to use those spells the most. So how do we go about doing that? Well, it changes on every boss, so let's start off with Magtheridon. How do we maximize our effective healing on Magtheridon? To figure that out, let's look at the top of the priority list. The first thing we have here is 3-stack Life Bloom on max players. Now, can we do effective healing with this strategy? Well, on this boss, yes we can, because in phase 1 of Magtheridon, you'll have 3 or 4 tanks taking consistent damage, which is perfect for us because we can just put 3-stack Life Bloom on all of them. So right off the bat, our healing strategy for Magtheridon phase 1 is basically set in stone. We will spam Life Bloom on all the tanks as much as humanly possible. If one of the tanks stops taking damage, or if you accidentally let Life Bloom fall off, then you will have globals to spare that you can use. Once this happens, you will want to go down this list to figure out which spells you should spend those globals on. So next on the list is Swift Mend. Can we realistically use Swift Mend during this part of the fight? Well, not really, because Swift Mend requires Rejuve or Regrowth to be on the player first, and it also requires the player to be low health for the spell to be effective. Now, if you run with 4 tanks, you probably won't ever be able to cast Rejuve or Regrowth during this part of the fight, because all of your globals will be eaten up by Life Bloom, obviously. However, if you run with less than 4 tanks like I do, you may have the globals to use Swiftmend effectively here, so just keep that in mind. Next on the list is 3-stack Life Bloom. Now, is it worth it to reapply 3-stack Life Bloom if you're already managing 2 or 3 other Life Bloom stacks at the same time? I don't think so. I think it just will take too long, and it's just not worth it, in my opinion, so I don't think it's realistic to do this. I think your globals would be better spent on Regrowth and Rejuve instead, like I did here. You see how I let this stack of Life Bloom fall off, and rather than reapplying it, I figured my globals would be better spent on Regrowth and Rejuve. Also try to pay attention when one of the tanks stops taking damage due to their ad dying, or they lose aggro or something. Once that happens, you'll want to stop reapplying Life Bloom to that tank, because it will just be overhealing. Notice as well that I don't really ever use 1-stack Life Blooms on the raid, even if there is raid damage happening, because the HPS of a 1-stack Life Bloom is really bad, and it's also basically impossible to get the bloom effect off without it overhealing, which is where the majority of the heal comes from that spell. So basically, you pretty much never use 1-stack Life Bloom on the raid, unless you're going out of mana really fast, or the raid is taking 0 damage and you're predicting that the raid will take a lot of damage in the future. In that scenario, you can throw out a couple 1-stack Life Blooms, throw out a couple Rejuves before the raid damage happens, so that the bloom effect of the Life Bloom triggers once the raid takes damage. And here's an example of me doing this on Gruul. So here the shatter happens. Now notice how there's no realistic way to do effective healing with any of these abilities in this situation, right? Which means 1-stack Life Bloom is technically the best spell to use, since the bloom effect will go off after the shatter happens. So let's see what happens here. 3, 2, 1. Shatter goes off. The blooms go off, or at least some of them go off effectively, and we do, actual healing. Anyways, let's talk about Magtheridon phase 2. So in this phase, there are only 2 sources of damage going out. There will be tank damage, a lot of tank damage, and a little bit of raid damage from the people who get knocked into fire and click the cubes. So let's talk about the tank damage first. Now, the obvious thing to do is to load up the tank with all your hots and maintain them. But the not so obvious thing to do will be you'll want to be timing your regrowth casts so that they land the moment the tank takes damage. And the best way of doing that is to look at the boss and start casting your regrowth shortly after a melee swing happens. That way your heal will land right after the next melee swing happens. Does that make sense? Like if your tanks are under geared and Nightbane and Mag are just destroying them, then this will help you a lot to keep them alive. Don't wait until the damage happens to start casting. You want to be casting before the damage happens. And if mana is an issue in this phase, then just make sure you're canceling your cast if you see that they're gonna overheal. Here's another example of where precasting regrowth is a good idea. So this trash in Karazhan is particularly lethal for tanks, so you're going to want to make sure that you time your regrowth so that it lands as soon as the tank takes damage. Then after that, you load up the tank with all your hots after the regrowth. Pre-hotting the tank in TBC is just really risky because you'll probably get aggro, especially if the tank isn't that good, so just be aware of that. Now in regards to raid healing during phase 2, I would suggest using regrowth and rejuve primarily, while also maintaining the 3-stack life bloom on the tank. Now if we go off our priority list, you could argue that putting 3-stack life blooms on the people who stand in fire and click the cubes is better, but I personally think it takes too many globals to get that going, and your healing will also be limited to only 1 or 2 targets. Also the bloom effect will almost certainly overheal. So I would just stick with rejuve and regrowth for this. It feels way better. Again, since Swift Mend is a high HPS spell, always be looking for situations where you'll be able to get effective healing out of it. For the last phase, use Tranquility after the ceiling falls down if you're able to, and hopefully the dick fuckers in your guild will actually click the cubes and you'll be able to kill the boss. See, my guild is a bunch of fucking shitters, so like we all died on my beautiful meg parsing attempt, and it made me want to uninstall. Actually, so hopefully you aren't in a shitty normie guild like I am, and you know what, you'll be fine. Let's cover one more boss before I end this guide. So the boss I want to show you guys is Netherspite. So this is the only boss in this tier that has consistent raid damage going out at all times, so your healing strategy on this one will be different from all the other bosses. So to figure out how to tackle this boss, let's look at our HPS priority list again. Now, starting from the top, we have 3-stack life bloom on max targets. Is that realistic? Can we do effective healing with that strategy? Absolutely not, because the tank doesn't need to be healed on this boss, and the rest of the raid will not take enough damage to warrant the amount of healing that 3-stack life bloom does. So let's move on to the next spell. Swiftmen. Can we realistically make good use out of Swiftmen? Well, absolutely we can. You will want to be using Swiftmen essentially off cooldown on the player that has the blue beam. Especially once their stacks start ramping up, they'll be taking a shit ton of damage, which is really good for Swiftmen. And next up, we have 3-stack life bloom on one player. Can we realistically make good use out of that? Yes, we can. We will be putting 3-stack life bloom on the blue beam target and trying to maintain that for the latter half of phase 1 at the very least. And after that, we have regrowth. You won't be needing to use regrowth too much on this boss, but if you do want to use it, try to time your heal so that it goes off as soon as the blue beam player takes damage. And if people enjoy bathing in the void zones on this boss, you can use it on them as well. Next up, we have rejuvenation. This spell will be your bread and butter on this boss. Rejuve is perfect for healing this type of damage, so you'll want to be spamming it when you're unable to use any of the previous spells that I've covered already. Lastly, we have 1-stack life bloom. You will only use this if you don't have the mana to spam rejuvenation for the whole fight. Since if we look at our healing per mana priority list, 1-stack life blooms are incredibly mana efficient. Assuming, of course, that you can get the bloom effect to go off without it overhealing, which on Netherspite is it's kind of hit and miss. You know, Rejuve is much less likely to overheal, which on this boss, Rejuve is less likely to overheal, which makes it a better option than 1-stack life bloom, and it also does more healing. So it's best just to stick with Rejuve unless you're scared that you'll go The last thing I want to cover really quickly is positioning and movement. So you want to make sure that you are always positioned to be in range of as many people as possible at all times, and you want to minimize your movement as much as possible. Also make sure that when you are moving, you are still casting something since you are a Resto Druid, so there's no reason not to be. There's also no reason not to be casting something as like any other healer as well, unless you literally play a healer that just has no instant cast spells at all. So Magtheridon is by far the most important boss when it comes to positioning. You have to make sure that you're in range of all the tanks, and don't use the excuse that your raid leader assigned you to heal one tank, so therefore you only have to heal that one. No, that's fucking cringe, okay? Don't fucking say that. Just make sure you're prioritizing your healing on the tank that you're assigned, but also continue to put hots up on the other tanks. Don't just heal the one tank. That's just cringe. Don't be like this Resto Druid here in my guild who's standing over here and isn't in range of this tank over here. Just don't do that. Anyways, that's my advanced Resto Druid guide. Do you see how much healing I did on this boss? Do you see the other Resto Druid? This guy has the exact same gear that I do, and I fucking destroyed his ass. And you know what? You guys can do it too. I believe in you guys. I hope that all of you are absolute fucking chads with the knowledge that I have given you here today. And you know what? If your healing doesn't improve from watching this video, then I would suggest turning off your computer and just go in the corner, curl up into a ball and cry. Because what I've given you here today is money. Okay, so if you can't figure things out from here, just, you know what? Just go back to watching Asmongold, man. Like, I'm fucking sick of this shit. But before you go, I am gonna need you to follow my Twitch stream immediately. Like, I want to be a streamer so fucking bad. So just follow my Twitch stream and there will be no problems, alright? Don't fucking make this a problem. Go fucking follow my Twitch stream and then you can go back to watching Asmongold. Okay? I will be streaming when I get unbanned, which is on the 15th of September. So please watch me or I will cry. Bye bye now.